Today we are going to talk about maintaining mental health in crisis. We have 4 panelists with me and 3 panelists with me. All of them are specialists in this field, mental health. So first of all, I would like to talk about why we came up with this session. Because of the situation right now, many people are in need of attending mental state. We get to take care of body pretty well, but mental health is still kind of left behind. And we wanted to address this, let's say, a gap. And this session is not to talk about anything political, anything like the situation, actual situation. Our purpose is providing a safe forum where we can talk about what we are feeling, what we can do about emotional state and mental stability. So thank you for coming, everybody. I'd like to introduce you the panelists today. Please introduce yourself. First, your name, then what do you do professionally, and what's the relationship with this your profession to this particular topic, and why you are here today. Let's go with Norman.
Hello. It's really nice to be here with you. Thank you for coming. My name is Norman Christensen. I'm in Western Massachusetts in the United States. I've worked as a psychologist for many, many years, focusing mostly now on mindfulness, teaching, and yoga instruction. I have combined all sorts of different experiences that I've had over the 40 years as a psychologist. And I combine that in my conversations with classes and people individually. And I'm here because I really feel a need to reach out and be of support and gain as much understanding as possible and use my experience to blend in with yours and hopefully move things forward in a positive way. Thank you.
Thank you, Norman. Helena?
Mm-hmm. Good morning or afternoon, depending on where are you connected from. We're thankful for this connection, mainly because human connection supports well-being, and we'll discuss about that. And I'm Helen, and what I do is I connect and share with people with the aim to support them on their way. Sometimes it's a way of self-development. Sometimes it's a way through darker valleys, sometimes kind of both. And I am psychologist and coach, soft skills trainer. I'm really keen on mindful practice. I teach mindfulness. I work as a therapist and I do crisis interventions. And I'm very thankful to Yuka, who had this strong will to support you guys. And we knew there are people around you who you would love to support as well. And I'm sure you all are involved in goodwill already. And you might also be struggling as well. So therefore, we thought it would be fruitful to share some practical information and some practice as well, so that you can incorporate these into what you already do and take good care. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Helena, for coming.
And I'll go last.
Yes,
my name is
please.
Chris Garrell. I'm an executive leadership coach, author, speaker, and ne'er-do-well, and I specialize mostly in emotional intelligence and cultural intelligence while working with executives. I also have a background in theology, and have worked a lot with people who are going through crisis, both emotionally and sometimes that challenges our core beliefs and our core belief systems. So, I really have a deep compassion for what people are experiencing right now, and what we can do about that.
Thank you very much for coming. So my name is Yuka Nakasone, and I'm a globalization strategist, and I happen to be working in this industry of globalization, localization, translation, language, whichever you are. And there are some needs in this industry. That's why I'm here to moderate. So I'm going through right now the safety guidance and how to participate part, because the safety is the first order of the session. If anybody feels not safe, notify us as soon as possible through chat or through email, anything. We will do our best to assist the audience, you, and we may open a safe channel to communicate after session if there's a need. And then the second point is you can turn off the video if you're not feeling safe, but I don't think the audience camera is on, so I don't think I don't have to say this. I was not sure. So that's clear. And so let's go. First, I would like everybody to be present in this session. So why don't we do a mini grounding session so that we can be really present in this session as a speaker, as an audience, as a moderator. Would you lead this, Norman, please?
Yes. Well, let me say welcome again. It's an honor to be here with you. So if you feel comfortable, just close your eyes a little. If you'd rather have your eyes open, that's perfectly fine. And just sit in a way that you feel comfortable also, but that you also feel, in fact, where your body is being grounded, either on the floor or a chair or whatever it might be that you're sitting on. And then just do what you know yourself you can do to just soften your being right here and begin to relax yourself. And come into this room. Come into this space with us. And allow yourself to receive and open to whatever degree you feel comfortable. There's no other requirements. There's nothing else for you to do. You don't have to learn something that you don't really want to or anything. You just pick and choose that as you go along. And as you begin to realize that your body is here, and to whatever degree you've been able to sift your thinking and allow and invite the presence that we all have an opportunity to share, then slowly begin to release the tension in your eyes if you've closed them, and open, and we'll begin. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Norman. So first, we would like to talk about what we are feeling. It's a big question to ask, especially these days. I'm going to ask you, panelists, what are we feeling? And I go first. What am I feeling? Overwhelmed because there's so much to do, so little time. And on top of everything, the world seems to be collapsing. Like the world, as we know, as I know, is collapsing. And I have friends under fire. It feels like not fair. So I'm scared when I think of my friends uh, in the situation war zone. That's what I'm feeling.
I mean, thank you for your vulnerability, Yuka. That's and I mean, that in itself is healing, just to be able to name what you're feeling. But one of the things that we want to do here is to I call it thin slice, slice apart what you're actually feeling, because a lot of what I hear, I hear your fear for, and your concern for your friends. I also feel there's a sense of hopelessness, like you can't
Yeah.
do anything about it. Um, and then behind all that, your compassion for others. Um, so the first thing we get to do in situations like this is really, unbundle all the different feelings, especially when we feel overwhelmed. um, Often that's a feeling on top of a feeling on top of a feeling that all compound with each other and result in our sense of overwhelm. And it's important to break apart the feelings. Norm and Helena, you want to jump in on what your experience was?
Go ahead, Alina.
Yes, I'm just thinking that the emotions can really differ, and it might be complex, and it might not. It can be both ways, and it might be absolutely like normal if you feel fear or anger or sadness or anxiety. I experienced great sadness and surprise. Yes, but it can be quite a mixture, and we might be also experiencing loss of control, loss of safety. And this all may result in that it's like disrupting our daily rhythms. It might touch our habits. It might derail the automatical pilots, and we may find ourselves in long tension, mental tension. And so, saying this, we can see that many of us are touched by this crisis, and it is very normal reaction. Yes, and as we discussed yesterday, this all emotional states and thoughts and feelings in our body is something very normal. Normal reaction to a very unnormal situation. Yeah. Maybe Norm, you wanted to add something.
Thank you. That was very nice, both of you. Yeah, I'm full of many feelings, and I know that sometimes when we're full of many feelings, it's difficult to even sort out which feelings they are. There's often a rapid movement from one thought to another and jumping around. And one moment you feel this way, perhaps, and then in another moment your mind is shifted to something else. And this is perfectly normal, perfectly, and something that I think we learn and get to learn and practice being compassionate with ourselves while this happens. It's not one special way that you're supposed to feel. You feel what you feel, and all feelings are acceptable. And so knowing that, and knowing that your feelings may be similar to someone else's, but maybe quite different. Sometimes for instance, during this process and this period of time, I felt very angry. And there's a part of me that doesn't want to accept that I can get that angry. And yet I know anger is a normal feeling. And it's how I choose to respond to that feeling. And and that takes practice, because sometimes I get caught up in an emotion that then takes me on a story, and I'm out there thinking about it and talking to myself, and I've got this internal dialogue going on. It's like the center of gravitational narrative. It's going on inside of us, and it's not something you just stop.
Yeah.
And I think that's important to realize. We don't push this away.
Yeah.
What we do is we live in it, and that it is part of who we are.
Yeah.
And that collectively today, we get to acknowledge how collectively we are involved in this, and that collecting together connects us.
Yeah.
And that connection, to me, just feels so strong. It doesn't erase everything, but something seems redeeming about that for me. And I really, that's when I ditto both of everything that Helena and Chris said, and Yuka.
And Norma, I would like to piggyback on what you're saying, because what you might hear as participants, you might hear that Norm is talking about, and Helena were talking about, the thoughts that we have. And one of the things that the three of us know and use in our practice is that we help people identify what are the thoughts that we're having that precede our feeling. And then if we can identify what the thought is. So for example, if we're talking to Yuka and she's upset, fearful, worried, very concerned about her friends in other countries who are nearer to the conflict and stuff, what might the thought be that causes that feeling? And we could imagine several things, or I can ask Yuka directly. But what we do is we look at, well, my thought is they're in danger. I can't do anything about it. I want to help, and I feel trapped because I have no arms long enough to reach out and hold them. And so, if we identify the thought that's preceding the emotion, then we might be able to have another thought. Yeah. We might be able to say, well, what else might I think in this situation? How else might I reach out? And what Norm said, the other thing I wanted to piggyback on is, and I think we've all said, this very thing that we're doing right now, being together, is one of the best remedies for fear, anxiety, those intense feelings that we have, cause us to isolate. They cause us to say, I must be the only person feeling this way. And so we go inward, and what is the most therapeutic thing that we can do is be with other people, whether it's video, like we're doing now, or actually being with them physically present. That, number one, will do more for you than anything else that you could do. It's important. Make a phone call, text somebody, get on video chat with them, with your smart devices or whatever.
Reach out.
Yeah.
Reach out to connect with others.
Just one moment. So I'd like to see if anybody in the audience would like to share what they're feeling.
Yeah.
So we can kind of see what's the collective feeling we have right now. If you can type in the chat, please go ahead and type what you're feeling. I'm not seeing any reaction. for the moment.
Well, they might be typing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
the other thing, while we're waiting for people's responses, I'd like to ask Norm and Helena, because they, you guys are specialists in mindfulness and mind-body connections. One of the things that I'd like to ask is, what are the physical aspects of these emotions that we're experiencing? How do you identify those and deal with those?
You want to take that, Helena?
I can grasp it. If it comes to high level of stress, this can be really connected to palpitations, meaning the intense heartbeat. It can be sweating. It can be great tension in your body. Also, the tension can result in sleeplessness or restlessness, which can lead to exhaustion, actually. It can be on the body level, tension in your jaws or tension, sweating hands. These all are the signals that the body is reacting to your thoughts and emotions, and it circles around. So I really liked what Chris said, that the thoughts are producing the emotions really fast, and the thoughts are fast, and the emotions are slower. So what happens is you have a thought, and then you have the emotion that comes with the thought, but the emotion has a longer period of being with you, which results in bringing new thoughts that are somehow on this vibe. So this means that your emotional state, once you're in the emotional state, can turn into another sequence of the thoughts that are adequate to this emotion. And it's great to observe this, because once you see, you can start to work with it, So if you see this pattern of your mind, you can become kind to it. You can somehow start handling. If you see it's, then you're not in like in the train of associations. So you can step out of the train and take a few breaths and observe your thoughts, your emotions, your body, and you can take a few soft interventions in each level of those. Yeah, maybe Norm, if you can add.
This is exciting. It's great. I think of well, one of the things I wanted to say, Chris said earlier about naming an emotion or naming a feeling the best we can. What that does is actually triggers something different in the brain. And there's a limbic system. I don't want to get too complicated here with neuroscience, but that relaxes a little. And what that does is it brings us into that part of our brain. It's called the prefrontal cortex. And that's the part that makes decisions and can figure things out, actually can find humor again sometimes, and can be more present. And so sometimes just naming an emotion is very helpful to us. It's very useful, and you can actually feel the difference about it when it starts to happen. I would also like to say something else about the whole notion of identifying a feeling. Sometimes even preceding the naming of the feeling is the sensation that body experiences. Your body is always in the present moment. Your mind is hardly ever there. But your body is always there. Yeah. So if you can understand just, okay, I sort of feel, and it doesn't have to be really clear, like I feel sad or all that. Maybe it does, but maybe it is rather, but not always identifiable. But I might say, well, I feel agitated. And then maybe say to yourself, well, where do I feel that agitation? And start to look now at the body. And this is not a cognitive process. This is a process of identifying where I might feel that. And when you start to feel that, you can investigate it and you can explore it.
I have a
and
question.
so being, yeah.
Yeah. because you said that we have to we get to identify all these feelings and sensations, right? And you talked about anger, and I was like, because what I didn't say when I said what I was feeling was anger, and I hardly can feel that feeling, and I kind of imagine that there's somewhere in me it's kind of hiding. I, is it true or it's my imagination? Where's my anger?
Well, that's good. That's a good question. Where do you feel it? Sometimes people feel an emotion strongly in their throat, in their chest, or in their abdomen. They might feel it in their shoulders, in their back, their upper back.
What,
So where you actually feel that is
I
going to be
mean,
different for you than maybe me or for someone else. But
I, I,
that's
I, I can't feel anger. When people usually get really upset and angry, I get to be that way sometimes, but it takes a long process and long way to get to that. Oh, maybe I'm hungry,
Yeah. And
yeah,
you know,
yeah,
that's what you're pointing to, Yuki, is perhaps something that's culturally different. So
Mm,
yeah.
some people may process the current situation. I'm just reading the chats, and the
mhm,
difference between what Marina posted and what Alfonso posted. Some people will process this as anger. Emotions have I love the fact that the word motion is inside emotion. You know, emotions kind of have uh, a reaction that we want to pay attention to. So, for example, anger is often an emotion that's associated with something is wrong that I feel, a need to correct.
mm,
There's been a wrongdoing, and so anger is more associated with that. Whereas, fear is an anticipation of some future event, the possibility of something worse than what is currently happening going on, and powerless is a more of a conceptual type emotion. So you might feel it more, in your neck and head. So each of these emotions, there isn't a right emotion to have in this situation. There isn't, you should feel this way or shouldn't feel that way. Some people feel distant and confused
mhm,
from what's going on in the world, and they don't know what to do. Some
yeah,
people are going to feel, very, angry about the violation of other people's rights, or they may take it on that way. Um,
mm,
Sadness, is another way people process it. And what Norman is pointing to is that when we find it, feeling it in our body, whether it's neck or
mm,
head or chest or stomach,
mhm, mhm,
those are clues as to what the type of emotion is.
mhm,
I want to go back to something Helena said in terms of the thought emotion sequence, and that the emotion plays out over time.
mm,
What happens with us also is that the emotion then cycles back into not a really conscious process, but a subconscious process where, if we're feeling, let's say, anxious or fearful,
mm,
our bodies start reacting in a fearful way. Our
mm,
breathing becomes shallow and rapid. The veins in our hands and our lower limbs, and our arms constrict so that blood can be concentrated around the vital organs. It's called
mm,
fight or flight. It's something that happens. It's pre-programmed in us as human beings.
mhm.
But as that physiological thing starts happening to us, that sends another message back to the brain that I'm actually more scared than what I thought I was. And so it
Oh my God.
recycles itself, and
Over and
it
over.
builds it over and over, and it builds and builds and builds.
Right.
One of the tools that we use often is just the very fact of breathing
Mm,
3 slow, long inhales and exhales will
mm,
reverse that physiological response like that in three full cycles, because your body's doing that fight or flight thing that's triggered by our breathing and our the vasoconstriction in our outer limbs. What we do when we deeply inhale and exhale is reverse that process, and it takes that spin cycle out of operation, and at least brings it down to a level of manageability. You're still fearful. It's still the same situation that you're in, but the emotion isn't accelerating on the emotion and compounding itself. So I hope I'd like to have each of you guys address some of the responses that are in the chat now.
And so I can see insecurity, anger, fear, anxiety, powerlessness, guilt, confusion. What's going on?
Confusion. A lack of confidence. I see
lack
there.
of confidence. So can each of you comment on these things?
Elena?
Yes, I was thinking when I read those reactions, and I'm really thankful for your sharings, because you see how intense and very structured feelings we might have these days. And I experience with my clients nowadays that they feel like that. And they somehow often feel a bit ashamed that this is happening with them, even though they are not directly perhaps in a conflict, or they are quite safe, but yet this is happening. And I would really like to say it's a very appropriate, normal, and because the situation is so unnormal. And also I've seen that there are slight differences between the reactions, and I wanted to maybe mention the how we may differ in these let's say crisis situations, because we have different minds and our minds might react differently. And mostly we could see like 3 typical mindsets when we go through change, through the crisis. One thing that can happen to us, and we already touched that a lot, is that we are flooded by emotions, or it can be the other way around slightly. We can be like feel that the emotions are absent. This can happen as well. Or we might feel non-fitting emotions like altering, laughing and crying, and this all may happen. So it's like the emotional and bodily mode of mind, but it can be very different. And I've noticed that in the messages that you left for us, that it can be a driven doing mode, where you find yourself in quite high level of energy, and it takes you to activities, and you might feel that you need to do something, be very active, and sometimes this can be somehow meaningless. The activities can become aimless, like it can result even in cleaning over and over, or doing something, you know.
So what you're saying is, because of the emotions we have, that we can be triggers to do something meaningless.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. And as we can get agitated, and we may be open to conflict easily because we are so stressed. So this can also happen. And then the third mode that we can also experience would be like cognitive patterns, cognitive ruminating and thinking. And we may have the tendency to keep analyzing everything from all angles, and we may have repetitive loops and invasive thoughts and ideas. and this may bring us to some tunnel vision, and we may be having problems with concentration, and this may reduce our actual capacity to receive information. We may see things black and white, and this also can be a result of all the emotions that we are facing these days. And I could see some of the signs of this in your messages.
Yeah. Right. And somebody can quickly define tunnel vision that you used?
Did you start that, Helena? Go ahead.
Yes, I was the tunnel vision. I was thinking that you start focusing on one topic and you stop seeing the other things around, and so you get a bit disconnected from the other information or other content. And then what happens also with this sequence is that it gets really exhausting, and we may find ourselves quickly really out of energy and in rumination of some pattern that is just exhausting. Yeah.
So you get.
I think there's a way, as a model, many people may be aware of this called the fight, the flight, or freeze model.
Yes.
And when you think of tunnel vision, sometimes that's when we're in that frozen part of what our body and our minds are choosing to do with it at that point. And so, and when we're in that flight, we might want to run. We want to get moving, get physical about it. And in fact, our body, Chris was saying how it goes to the vital organs, but it also goes to the extremities that are necessary to do something that we need to do. So, you may see this in children, for instance, when they get anxious and worried and upset, they might want to run, but it's not solely just children. And so you might feel like one moment, you just keep repeating things to your mind, and you feel yourself just stuck in that rut, and you're not seemingly making any kind of progress, but really there is something in there that's progress. And what we tend to do is berate ourselves and put ourselves down for feeling these things, as opposed to exercising a real sense of compassion. This is hard. I have to be kind to myself. I'm not sure how to do this. I'm really feeling stuck. And that self-conversation is understandable. And it's actually very useful, because you could, once you start to, again, name an emotion, name what you feel in a certain way, it does open up. And what opens up is a certain access to that sort of intelligent feeling about worry and anxiety. I mean, there is something. I mean, Freud said that anxiety is necessary to keep us moving and getting things done. Yeah. And to some degree, it is, of course. But so I think that the reason I want to use that model is to just so that folks would think, geez, where does my emotion feel in here? Where does it fit in what's going on? And sometimes a little model like that, which doesn't fix anything, but it helps us understand things. And when we understand things, that opens to more understanding. And when one more understanding, so that opens to what we call awareness in mindfulness. We say, the more aware we are, then the more aware we can become, because awareness leads to awareness, and that's infinite.
Yeah.
So,
and as you said, awareness doesn't solve the problems that we have, but it's a progress, right? And what we want to do right now is, when we can name these feelings or emotions, or detect emotions through sensations, is there any solution for that? Is there any technique to use to save ourselves? Or this is where I like to take this conversation.
I I maybe would like to really highlight this aspect that Norm said, which I really find beneficial, because very often we have the emotions kind of unseen. So once we take a look and incline inside, and we actually allow them to be seen or heard, and we acknowledge them, and this should be done with kindness, because if we are mindful, it means that we are also kind to what we experience. This is a very important part, because if we're focusing but unkindly, that would be stressful, that would be harming. But if we're focusing and seeing with the kind intention or with the kind position, this itself brings the seeing and maybe gradually understanding. And usually when we take this step with kindness, it usually takes, for example, like 50% of the load of the emotion. So we're not, it's not that heavy anymore, you know.
And
so that's the second step, is the acceptance, because the stress of when we recognize that we don't feel good, we don't want it, we want to change it, we want to feel nice, we don't want to feel bad. So we keep running away from that emotional state, and it keeps going after us because it's with us. So there's no escape. There's no escape. Yeah. So the only, or what we find very nurturing, is to actually stop running and embracing with kindness those hard emotions, opening, seeing, hearing them. And we can even have a dialogue with them. And usually what happens is that our mind somehow slows down, and then it doesn't solve the situation, but we may start seeing some options that will be beneficial for us. Yeah.
like
I'd like to add one more into the fight, one more scenario into the fight, flight, or freeze, and that is, there's a variation on the fight, which is there are some people who, in a crisis situation, get very calm, and they're able to be clear, and clear thinking, and they're sort of the rock of Gibraltar, that people cling to, the pillar of strength that people cling to. And what's interesting about that is that it is still part of the pattern of fight, flight, or freeze. Because what you'll notice afterwards, and often that's my reaction, but after the fact, I remember I'm a swimmer and a lifeguard, and one of the first times I saved a person who was drowning, I just knew exactly what to do. I went into action. I took care of the person. I got them to shore. I did the mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. He threw up the water and started breathing again. I did that all extremely calmly. I knew exactly what I needed to do. And then my body started shaking violently, as the adrenaline, from, the fight or flight syndrome came into play. And I just, it was the most, it scared me how violently I was shaking, uncontrollably. So, so this stuff happens in lots of different ways. I think what I'm hearing from my partners here is that there is not a formula, and I want to come back to Agnes's comment that that I'm losing confidence in my decisions. That is such a powerful way to phrase what's happening when we have all these different kinds of emotions. There are hundreds and hundreds of emotions. I once put together for a group of scientists a periodic table of some 190 different emotions, and just for the sake of trying to get people to understand the nuances of them. And I left another 100 out of my chart, but so we may not be able to name the emotion accurately. And so it feels like I'm not in control. It feels like I'm not making proper decisions about my decisions, about my emotions, because I'm identifying something as frustration when it's actually anger, or vice versa. And those are kindred spirits in terms of the emotional world. It's not too far down the field from frustration that we get angry. We want to turn the situation around. So learning how to get those differences there helps us understand what the decision is that I want to make, how I want to, listen to my thoughts and see if I can change my thoughts in some way, and say, what is it that I can do with this type of emotion or that type of emotion?
Yeah.
And it's a practice. It's something that we get better and better at. The more we learn how to slow that process down and see what's the emotion and what's the thought before it. Norm?
Well, one of the things I'd like to say about that, Chris, is use a great example. People in emergencies. I mean, there are many workers around the world, even in the men and women in this conflict that's going on now. I mean, they're able to function in a way that's just beyond understanding and to us at the moment. And some of that is because of, for what you were describing, if you were a lifeguard, you trained to be a lifeguard too. And that training is a pattern of thought and ability that you were able to call on and shut down the emotions that were might have interrupted that process of remembering. And boom, you were able to do that. Actually, we can now know even more about that we can practice that. And that's one of the practices of mindfulness, is learning to watch your mind. And in that process, you learn to not respond to the idea. I think we said this earlier, is that when something comes up, it's real easy for us to create a story around it. Oh my gosh, Agnes's statement is so poignant, is that I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do, and I'm failing. I can't do this. And you can create a story for yourself when you're practicing. And as you said, Chris, they're able to practice a step back and watch it. And this is not in the middle of a crisis that you begin to learn to do this. You learn to do this day in and day out. And so that as the time arises, and we're all going to walk into worry throughout our days. Some people think we all go through periods of anxiety every day on some level. And the more we're practicing that day in and day out, that mindfulness, that ability to stop and watch the mind rather than get caught up in the story, when the time comes and we're in this crisis, we have access to that ability to step back. But it's a practice. And without that practice, it's much more difficult to do.
Yeah, and I'm hearing from three of you that we have to observe, we have to kind of separate from our thought and then our emotions and our thoughts and process it. But I understand all of that. I understand intellectually. So, for example, Helena, when you say stop, observe, accept, then blah, do you have any specific way to practice that as me, as non-professional, or we have to go to a psychologist to do that?
We don't have to go to psychologists. However, the practice is
what do I have to do?
I
For
think
example, a simple kind of steps that I can take, because it's my reality that I'm scared. I'm really overwhelmed. I feel it in my body that,
yes.
you know.
Yes.
So
It's nice that you've mentioned the body, because just like Norm said, sometimes our minds are really, growing and growing, and they're in the future and in the past, and our emotions are all around. And this is pretty wise to begin with the body, which is always present. And it's not cheating on you. It's not making anything up. It's just present and experiencing whatever is there is with you. So I would probably start with connecting with the body, which is the great way, as Chris said, through the breath, because breath is always here with us. It's always from the first breath to the very last breath. It's a pattern that we can listen to. We can actually listen to our breath, and this can be very helpful to anchor. Also, through the body, we can anchor as well as what Norm did with us at the beginning, like feeling the weight of the body, feeling the connection with the ground. If we are very agitated, it is helpful for people not to sit at the chair or the wheelchair, but to sit at the solid ground. So with the crisis interventions, we sometimes people lose their trust, and you don't even trust your chair, so you sit at the ground or you even lay at the ground and feel the support and just breathings. And the breathing should be slow with the focus on exhale. And I know this sounds simple, yet when we're agitated, this can be a challenge. And it's enough to work with these.
Yeah, let's say when I feel really agitated and very, I can't
overwhelmed.
focus. Overwhelmed. I can't focus. I have to do this work, but I can't focus. I just go to my living room, lay myself down, and 3 minutes I put the timer and breathe and count the breaths. This is what you suggested.
Yes, it's and you may count the breath and try to make them a bit slower with the exhale, letting out, letting out. You can start observing the emotions or thoughts, and you can name them. There's a fear, it's here with me, or there's anxiety. Seeing it, accepting it's there with us at the moment with kindness, and not pretending it's not happening, because this is cruel to ourselves. So showing kindness.
I have an acronym.
Yes.
There's an English word, American word, English word, that probably is well known around the world. It's RAIN, RAIN. Everybody knows what that means, but we have a little different meaning, but it's an acronym that you can use. And R stands for recognize. So you just recognize what it is. And I try to do much about it, just recognize it. That's the R. And then there's A, which says of course I can spell. Thank you though, Chris. I do appreciate, I need help a lot. So anyway,
sorry.
No. I was moving right along there.
Yeah, right.
So A is allowing it. So you allow it. You don't try and force it, push it away, and I shouldn't have this. What's the matter with me? You allow. It's here. I recognize that I'm agitated. I allow that I feel agitated. And then you investigate. And this is where you go to the body. And so don't do this cognitively. I said this earlier, but I'll say it again, that you don't do this cognitively at this point, try to figure out all the things that led up to this and all, but you say, where do I feel this in the body? What is it that I'm feeling about this? And then as you allow that process to unfold, you come to nurturance, and you nurture yourself. And that's, Elena said it several times, kindness. Place your hand on your heart. I saw her do that while we were doing the initial meditation. Nurture yourself. Think about how valuable you are, and how this is so important that you're doing to yourself. You're allowing yourself to be there. And then afterwards, reach out to others. Not necessarily immediately, but that in the ensuing hour or days, you reach out to others and really do something really important. Maybe you have a friend that someone was talking about calling people. Call them. Maybe you can reach out and see somebody and you can help them, take them to the store, spend 5 minutes with them. So reach out. One of the greatest things is to get outside of ourselves. And that's so hard in the moment. But when you start to soften some of the emotion a little bit and then reach out, the value of that is immeasurable. But RAIN, 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 and it stands for recognize, allow, investigate, and nurture.
Yeah.
So maybe that could be useful to some folks.
Yeah. And Anna is saying, I think I skipped the allow part of RAIN because her anxiety is often intertwined with the anger and frustration.
Yeah. And as I was saying before, anger is one of those, it's a very powerful emotion, and it has, I think it has a bad reputation. Anger is a very useful emotion. It motivates us often. It wants us to go into motion and do something to right the wrong. And so when we feel anger, that's one thing. But the second thing I want to say about anger is often a protection device that protects us. It's like an outward expression of emotion that protects us, our soft underbelly, our fearfulness, our vulnerability. Yeah, exactly. And so we have anger because we feel exposed and vulnerable. And the way to protect ourselves is like, like go after it. So I want to do the opposite and talk about a cognitive technique. Not a body technique. So we, so that we have both of them, because, we each have different styles.
Yeah.
And everybody's mental style is different. So some of us will want to do that bodily kind of stuff. Some of us are, real analytical in our style, and we want to do something more cognitive. So I use a technique called the ladder. You climb up a ladder with rungs on it. When we go through that, when we have an emotion and we have that experience of something's happening, and we identify that thought behind it, it's not a solo thought often. It's often, here's what the brain does. It looks at the current situation. It goes to its memory files to say, what do I know about what's happening? And what do I, what is it that my experience has told me? And then it projects that into the future. I'll give you an example. Let's say I'm walking alone in the woods and suddenly I see a very large bear coming towards me. Yeah. My brain goes immediately. Now, what I feel is fear, right? Yeah. That's my immediate emotion, right? But what's happening is my brain goes into its memory files and says, what do I know about bears? Oh, they're large carnivorous animals with sharp teeth and very long claws, and they are strong. And it projects it into the future and says, I might be that guy's lunch, in a few minutes. And so my fear comes from that set of if this, then that. And those are what I call the rungs on the ladder. So, what happens is I have an initial emotion, and what that is if this is the situation, then that might be the case. And then my brain goes, well, if that's going to happen, that's an if, then this might be the next thing after that. And if that's going to happen, then this, right? And that's where the intensity comes in our emotions, is that if, then, if, then, if, then. If we can identify those rungs on the ladder, as it were, we can also walk back down the ladder and say, well, maybe that's not the end point. I know one person who goes up the ladder so fast that she ends up, buried, like I'm dead and I'm buried and people are mourning over me already because I'm going to die in this situation.
She's the only one who's ever done that.
Right? But if we can walk and if we can say, well, no, I'm not going to die in this situation, but what's the if before that and what's the if before that? So if I start deconstructing that those set of if then extrapolations that my brain just naturally does. That's what our brains are built. They're an organ in our body. Its sole function is to make sense out of chaos.
Yeah.
we are in a chaotic situation right now. Our brain is fighting furiously right now to try to make sense out of this.
Yes.
And so what's going on for each of us in our emotional reactions is that it's that natural function, as Helena said at the beginning, it's so natural that we're doing this. It's what our brains are designed to do, is make sense. And right now, in we call it VUCA, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. VUCA is another acronym.
Is that an English word too?
No, it's just an acronym that people have. There is no word called VUCA. But when we have those four things together, our brain just races to try to make sense. And that's where our confusion comes from. That's where our panic comes from, our anxiety, and stress. And I want to define stress for us here. Stress is any situation in which the situation demands more of us than we have tools and techniques to cope with it. It's a simple definition. But stress is anytime we're in a situation that's demanding more of our minds and our bodies than we have skills to deal with. And so one of the things that we want to do here, and we actually have gotten into, is what are some of our techniques? What are our tools that we use that you can add to your arsenal so that, we might be able, because we have more adaptive tools, we might be able to, sorry, I talk with my hands. We might be able
climbing the ladder.
We might be able to, de-stress ourselves because we have other tools. So the ladder is one of the tools that I use, and mindfulness, techniques and stuff.
And for example, yeah, I get that. I get that intellectually, but how do you do that exactly in the situation like this? I get the situation with Bear, but yeah, but for example, in my situation of this overwhelm, how do you use this ladder? Can you unpack?
That is the unpacking.
That's a difficult question to answer because in order for many of us, not all of us, but to climb that ladder and to see that, which is a wonderful, I love that image. It's that you have to calm down enough a little bit to do that. When you're in overwhelm, some of us, I can't think that straight. My prefrontal cortex has gone dead, And so how do I get myself there? And what I use is that I practice mindfulness every day. I do a meditation every day. And it's in that process, Yuka, that I am gaining some of that ability to just watch whatever is happening. And we call it, Buddhism calls it equanimity, that we learn to become equanimous with what happens and what's thrown at us at life. That doesn't do a lot. It doesn't solve that kind of exploring investigation that Chris was talking about with the ladder. But if you can hold yourself in that moment with some composure at that proper, then you can maybe shift into that cognitive intellectual view of climbing that ladder and go, oh yeah, this is how I and then I can come back down and so forth. But if you can't, we don't have those tools to slow down and quiet down and relax down a little bit, then sometimes that's not access. Some people, maybe for Chris, for instance, he may go right to it. No, I'm serious. I've known him for a little while now. He's quick like that. He might go right to it. So that's good. So maybe it's a combination of these things that really answers to some extent, at least what we're doing. It's that, how do we make a life out of this? It's a lifestyle. It's not just simply, oh, this will be the trick. It's a bunch of tools that come together.
Bunch of tools.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So what
Helena,
I would like to, go ahead. Go ahead, Chris.
No, I was just going to ask Helena for what her take.
Yes. I think it's really depends on I usually work with clients like really individually in the crisis. So each of them might need a bit different approach. And when we are alone, what might be helpful, we might think of how we know ourselves, what can feel safe for us, because mainly we need to get back at least a little bit of the feeling of the safetiness and the way that we know ourselves. This can for someone it can mean that you cover yourself with your blanket, or for someone this may mean that the person will call a relative. For someone it will be something different, writing your thoughts down, and this we might differ in this.
So
and
we kind of have to find that calming or soothing activity for
pattern.
myself,
Yeah.
pattern that I can calm myself and come to the point that
for the first step.
I can observe what's happening, what my emotions, what's, is this what you're saying?
Yes. And for somebody it can be that a guided practice can be very helpful, because if we don't have the skill, like Norm said, we learn to practice this observing our mind, and it really takes a practice. It's like with the muscles, if you know how to exercise, that's nice, but if you're not doing the exercise, it's not very supportive. So if we don't have the practice yet, it can be helpful if we follow some guided practice of calming down.
Like guided
this
meditation.
yes, this can be very helpful for some of us. Some people it really takes them, it brings back the safetiness that they are guided through some practice, and it really calms them down, and they get to the level of being at least a bit grounded. And from that point of view, they can do the next steps. And sometimes this may be helpful that you write your emotions down, or you just name them. Just this can be
Journaling.
another step. Yes.
Journaling.
Yes.
So at this point, I would like to ask the audience if there's anything that they would like to ask, because there are lots of ideas and talk and techniques. If you have any,
and while we're
questions?
waiting for people to type in questions, I just want to add one last
Please.
piece in from from my background, and that is I had a friend of mine say that right now they were praying an awful lot, and in a lot of times in times of crisis we turn to our spirituality, but it can, as someone said earlier, it can challenge us, because we may have a set of beliefs that don't fit the situation anymore. We may have a set of beliefs that say, how can horrible things happen to good people? And we see horrible things happening. We see children injured or hurt or killed, and we just say that's not right. And so we in our prayer time, we have this type of prayer where we're asking for miracles, we're asking for favors from whatever we believe in, to be superior. And I want to suggest a different type of prayer that the mystics talk about, and that's called contemplative prayer. And that's a place where you quiet the mind. Instead of saying, please fix this, please take care of my friend, what you really want to do is sit in openness and try to still all those thoughts that you want to ask and demand of the situation, or of your deity or your higher power, whatever it is that you believe in, but rather wait and listen for what stirs inside you. Listen for what stirs in your heart or mind, as kind of guidance, internal guidance that might calm you, that might make you more useful to your friends and to people around you. But you want to just wait for, in the stillness, wait for that guidance that comes from from the indwelling part of spirit that is in you. So a lot of the masters, talk about contemplative prayer, and that's what they mean. They mean sitting quietly and allowing whatever to speak into you, not having a prejudged idea of what should happen, because, go back to, Norm mentioned Buddhism, going back to one of the things that the Buddha said was that, suffering, our own personal suffering, comes when we wish that the current situation isn't the way it is. And that's that acceptance in the RAIN model that Norm talked about. The acceptance is, oh, it is what it is. Allow me to sit with that and see what is spoken into me. Can I be receptive and let that happen? So I just wanted to, to add that into the mix as well.
I think that's great, Chris. I just want to say 1, 2, or 3 sentences around that is that it also, prayer and contemplative prayer makes us accountable to ourselves in a very deep way, that we go inside and we wait for that to surface. And that accountability is, we all actually need some accountability in life.
It's empowering.
It's empowering, and
Yeah.
and it's really important. So thank you for bringing up about prayer again. That's great.
To say something around that, Elena?
Yes, I'm really, this is touching me, and I think for me this is healing as well. I was, of course, asking myself these questions like, where is the meaning of this happening? And if this is to be happening, then what can we learn from that? Or how can we bring a meaning to our coping with that? And this also is a strong and powerful question for ourselves if we try to search for an answer.
That's that's really important, Helena. There are times when we get so willful that, like part of our anxiety is, I want to do something, and my will wants to, overpower what's overpowering me. And it's important for us to allow these kinds of situations to transform us, allow the outside to change us. So often we want to, and this is, I don't know, Yuka and I have long been friends and business partners, and we talk about a Western and an Eastern kind of philosophy difference. And, there's so much in the American and Western kind of thought process that wants to be in control. And it wants to be the change masters. We have courses on change mastery and things like that. But sometimes it's important to allow ourselves to be changed by those things that are outside of us, that are forces beyond us. Rainer Marie Rilke, a German poet from a while back, has a wonderful poem called The Man Watching, and the last stanza is like, so may we be changed and bent, like like the trees are bent in the wind in a storm. Maybe we should let ourselves be shaped by those forces that are greater than us, because that's how we learn and that's how we grow. So there's something also that's available here, even in the crisis of the emotionality of it, and when we allow ourselves and accept the situation, it can actually change us, and help us grow, even though we feel out of control.
Yes, Chris, exactly. And this was what helped me to go through my emotions, exactly, because when I was asking, like, this serious things happening, and I was asking in the meditation, what could be good about this? And then I started focusing how we can create the good. And I found this answer for me, that maybe it will lead us to be connected together, open our hearts open our minds and rebuild the humanity. And that gave me a lot of strength to focus on what can be done, and also what is in my zone of control, what I can do. And I actually found out that there's so many things that I can do to support all of these values that really matter to me. And this gave me the meaning. And when we have the meaning, we can go through any situation. When we have why, we can go through any what is happening.
Yeah. And
Studies during wartime find that actually people, when they gather together, whether it's in a bomb shelter or just in a church or whatever, when they gather together, there's a greater sense of peace, of calmness, of they actually the depression disappears. People feel much more positive. And it's kind of the reverse of what we'd think. Here are people who there was a bunch of studies done with groups in London during World War II, and they did surveys of their mental health status and self-report data of that, and they actually felt more positive because they were banded together in these bomb shelters, in these support groups. So if you get nothing else out of this whole session, getting together with other people is the most powerful thing that we can do.
Yeah.
So
There's a statement or the Bodhisattva, which is part of, excuse me, Buddhism too. I just read it. I wrote it down because I thought it was important. It said, whatever the circumstance, may they serve the awakening of compassion. May suffering awaken the heart to heart, and may it make love go viral.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Very touching. So with this, I would like to practice something here. If I Norman or Elena, would you like to lead probably 5 minute session of connecting, grounding? Would you like to do that? Can we?
Yes.
Yeah. Can we
I
do
think
that,
it's
Helena?
I think it's your turn, Helena.
Yeah.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
have been chosen. You are the chosen one.
Yeah.
So wherever you are around the world, just at your place, find a position that will be suiting you. May it be a bit relaxed and open and ready to be with yourself. And feel your body connected to the ground, resting. And you may focus your breath, always accompanying you. Inhaling and exhaling at its own pace. And maybe just observing right now what it is, the weather inside you. You may observe your thoughts that are present with you at the moment. Just seeing them, no need to change them, just accepting them. And we may also see what emotions are there with us now. There could be many, and sometimes we might feel emotional lessness. So just observing how it is now, there could be levels of emotions. So maybe just name them, see them, accept them, embrace them, even though they could be difficult. And try to embrace them with kindness, sense of care. And with another breath, we could go through our body and feel the sensations at the very moment, what our body tells us, what sensations we feel when there are these thoughts and these emotions. And we might also see some impulses of what we would like to do, how we would like to take care or react to all of that. And we may only be aware of them and later we will choose how to take care of ourselves. Just being aware now. And with the next breath, let's narrow our mind or our focus to the breath itself. No need to change it, just enjoying the in-breath and the out-breath. And with the next step, we can widen our focus to our whole body and mind, sitting at the position in your environment. And now it might be nice to ask ourselves a few questions. What would be nurturing for me now? What would be suiting for me? And what would make me feel comfortable, safe, nourished? And we might have a few answers for us. And with the last step, it might be nice to send some good wishes. Good wishes towards anyone that we would love to support at this very moment. So with next breaths, you may think of the people or beings that we wish to support with our good wishes. May we all be safe, in peace. And let's send these good wishes to ourselves as well. And with that, let's come back to our sharing slowly.
Olivia, thank you for that. That was
Thank you.
really sweet.
Wow, thank you very much.
I just want to end by saying, that we've been talking about these techniques for yourself, but these are things that you can do for your friends too.
Mhm.
That whatever we practice for ourselves, we can give as gifts to others.
Yeah.
So that meditation, even just taking time with another friend to do that might be the remedy for them. So thank you so much for that.
With this,
Maybe,
I'd like to just go ahead.
yeah, maybe you could feel that taking care of others is so supporting to ourselves as well. So,
Yeah.
Norm.
I just wanted to end with something, just my own way of ending something as special and heartfelt as this is to say to everyone, whatever goodness or benefit or value that you found here today, take that with you. Seek the goodness in your own self and in everyone you meet. And share peace and reach out with love.
thank you very much. So with this, I'd like to conclude this webinar. And to everybody who is watching live or replay, I would like you to reach out to the organizer if you like to keep listening this type of sessions. We are more than willing to continue. So please give us feedback. We may send you the email inquiry. So please give us some feedback, and please connect with us directly on LinkedIn or Facebook, and let's keep talking. And thank you very much for coming, Elena, Chris, and Norman. And let's keep on working together.
Thank you, Yuka.
Thank you for
Thanks,
sharing
Yuka.
this
Thank you,
space and
Kate.
time with us.
Yeah, thank you both, Kate and Yuka, for setting this up. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this fantastic session, really. We didn't have a lot of people joining, but we'll share the recording, and I'm sure people will watch it. Yeah.
Goodness ripples out at least 3 levels from every person. So just keep it going.
Oh,
thank you, everybody. Have a nice weekend. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Blessings,
Be
everybody.
safe.
Blessings.
Be safe. Be safe.
Right.
Find
Bye.
peace.
Bye.